That means.
I got it.
Ooh, got it. Got him. Yeah. Okay. So if we had to backtrack, what is cancel culture? Like if someone just opens a video, they don't know what to really talk about. Maybe they've heard about the Ellen shit. Maybe they've heard about their YouTuber getting canceled, whatever, whatever. What is it and what are we talking about? Why is it important?
So it's pretty hard to define, but I really think that it's pretty amorphous. Usually it's this was I actually really stumbled upon this. Like when I was directly trying to define this in my notes, it's really hard to because it's used as a blanket term for any time that anyone is trying to elicit social change or somebody in power laments or says something that does not align with the viewpoint of the person that is criticizing them, that has been deemed as cancel culture. But that is just ridicule that has happened forever with public figures. It is just the nature of it. And it seems to only happen when people are being inauthentic, usually. So, like, if Ellen portrays herself as like this great person, you find out she's like been murdering babies. Like, this is obviously extremely hyperbolic. That's going to cause a massive rise and is honestly deserving of social scorn. It is. Like, you're a public figure, you portrayed yourself for this way for this long, and you have been found not to be like that. That is actively harmful, and you might deserve that ridicule a little. And I don't really
Mhm.
think that labeling cancel culture is necessarily even a real thing or even a bad thing at times is a bad. I think it
Right.
would happen.
Uh,
But
I mean, I think that like how I had mentioned earlier about wearing a costume instead of actually being the character. So like wearing the character costume, like so when you said when Ellen portrays herself as something we have to bring into the conversation is she there's like this empire of your avatar that's presented on the internet and on the news and as a host like that does lay separate than like the individual, like the self, like the person that we know as Ellen, the person that we see, the host, all of this. Yes, it has been portrayed as this like good, perfect, wonderful, lighthearted, never mean, whatever, but there's also an off-camera version of really all of us. Like the person who you are when you work at Starbucks isn't always the person you are 24/7 when you're grumpy, when you're with your significant other. I just think that it's this silly thing that we point at like, hey, we don't like when you break you break the simulation of your avatar being this perfect thing. It upsets us when someone steps out of who we want them to be, who we feel safe with them being.
yeah, well, this is also highly contextual as well because, like, so what she got caught is like breaking workers' like she was being bad on workers' rights and being a horrible boss and just like and providing a really bad work environment, and that is way more directly harmful than you just being grumpy sometimes, right? So there's like levels to these
Word,
things. Like
word.
some people do not deserve scorn for just like being a regular person off camera, but if you're like actively found to be hindering other people's lives and being malicious in like a really tangible way, like a really problematic way, I think it's completely warranted to have this social praise that you earned through goodwill to be taken away, and that's fine because it's like that's just the way it is. Like you're not entitled to social praise.
Hmm. Hmm.
Like nobody is. That's just and I don't think that that's problematic, and it's also gone on forever. This is not new.
Okay. I mean,
But
it
I
seems
do
like it. Go ahead.
but I do think that we do need to cultivate a society in which the people are allowed to make mistakes. And they just can't be mistakes. They're like, oops, I just like I revoked a bunch of my workers' rights and underpaid them, or did something I like actively railed against a hypothetical. So, like, say you supposedly you did a lot of activism for whatever project, and then you in your back pocket have been paying the opposition a lot of money and you've actually been found to be what we call a grifter. Like that is perfectly deserving of social dispraise. Like if you're being a bad actor actively on purpose, like you that you have ulterior motives for saying a thing, you don't really believe this thing, and you are just trying to muddy the water for another cause, which does happen. That's fine. And once you're found out to be that, you woefully deserve it.
Yeah, I mean, how do we? There can't be like a perfectly black or white. It's always up to like the discrepancy of the situation and the person and what they've like. Like, does someone's good ever get to outweigh their bad, or is this always going to be like this judge, trial, jury, lawyer situation of you are either this or you're that? It's just
Yeah.
hard to know. Like, when do we choose to publicly hang someone, and when do we, just give them a timeout?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the public lynching is actually in days gone, because if you've looked at any of the cancellations of late, nothing happens. Just nothing happens to public figures. Like these people innately
You're
are,
right.
they hold a lot of power. Most people don't really care. So I think that a lot of the discourse around this is really hyper conflated, and this is actually not really a problem. Like cancel culture doesn't really affect a lot of people. Like, yeah, there are some niche instances where there are people that are a little too authoritarian and have some really specific beliefs. And when they go to impress them, they're obviously a little ridiculous. But most of the time, when I see anyone railing against this, it's usually what worries me the most is against any civil rights activism or anybody that is on the lower rungs of society trying to receive any like representation or power. And
Yeah.
I think it can very easily be used by bad actors. This kind of really niche issue of cancellation to just actively deter human progress.
Yeah, I think that's a big point there. I think that it could be used as a weapon to like make us self-police ourselves in a sense. Makes us not want to express ourselves or have opinions because we're scared. Like I was talking about with my podcast episode with my friend Ryan. He's just a regular dude. He's just a recent dad, so he's thinking about these things more. And he's like, "Dude, am I going to get canceled? Are people going to bring up my past and try to like hurt me or take what I have or what? Like, do I need to be worried about this?" But I think that it's interesting that it happens with famous people, with people up here. It's people who are up, on the hill, and then there is something. I'm not generalizing and saying it's only a bad thing, but there is something about the people down here who don't have much wanting to like be like, hey, well, I'm pissed off. I didn't get that much. I'm going to make sure you get what you have taken away, so you're back down to my level. It's basically getting power. It's kind of like the mask thing. You're now able, like if you're someone who's very pro masks and you see someone without a mask, you have power over saying, hey man, put your mask on. It's the same sort of trying to gain power when you don't have any weird thing.
Yeah, I think we're speaking to power dynamics a little. And there's a lot of agitation that's gone on because it's quite obvious to me that the people that hold power, billionaires, people that own big corporations, and politicians, have really decided and chosen for hundreds of years that the normal person is not of importance and is not deserving of like fair wages, any real rights, any real room to self actualize, or any liberty at all. So when I see people have maybe some niche, unacceptable opinions about canceling celebrities or anyone of power, I can't necessarily blame them because of the point at which that we got here, which is a real problem, which is everyone's overworked. People, housing prices are going up. Like there's a lot of real agitation and real humanitarian issues that are happening. Voting rights are getting stripped back. Like these are really problematic. And then
Obesity.
yeah, and then you compile that with all the political like pundits or for any news stations, instead of directing you towards, no, we need more workers' rights, we need unions, we need all these things that are going to deliver us more room to self-actualize. They force you to fight over meaningless cultural and virtue signaling, basically. So like the trans bathroom bill is my favorite because so trans people have a life expectancy of 35 years. They are one of the most like discriminated classes of people, and they're ever growing as well because now there's a little more room in society. It's a little more tolerant for them to express themselves and for them to be really authentic. And instead of talking about workers' rights, actual real meaningful change for these people, you have two very narrow sides of a political spectrum arguing about bathroom bills on purpose, and this forces outrage and discourse over something that is meaningless and nobody cared about. And that's kind of problematic because now we kind of all, as non owners of corporations or non politicians, have a similar interest in society, but we're being forced to fight against it, fight against each other. When
Mm.
actually, if all these people had more rights, it would make everyone's life better. And that's what I'm really the most worried about the cancel culture discourse with, is that it's just used mostly to cause infighting because it's like a non issue. Like it really is. I mean, it doesn't actually really affect anyone. and it's not really real. There were some niche scenarios maybe 5 or 6 years ago in which this might be a problem, but from what I'm aware of, this has all really died down. And the only reason that anyone ever talks about it is because people that are against civil rights or are at least misunderstood or too committed to this very niche problem are just actively muddying the water of
Okay.
social discourse.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I'd say, I bet you right now, if there was somebody who is like really into the pop culture, who's being canceled, who's not, whatever, I bet you they could probably name like 8 to 10 people who are being canceled right now or have been within the last month. So the thing is, why is it important to focus on what these 8 people are like, if they're getting canceled or not, or they're being whatever, over anything else? Like, why is our discourse taken over by this tabloid version of what we should be talking about?
It's kind of just shown to us. It's just like it's an easy redirect or focal point away from real issues that plague everyone, right? So if we can focus on this thing, we don't need to focus on, well, your job or your boss actually makes a lot
Hmm.
of money off of you and you don't see a lot of it, and they don't actually need that anyways. Like Jeff Bezos is extrapolating and pulling billions of dollars from their workers while underpaying them. But if I can get you to focus on trans bathroom bills instead, you won't agitate, you won't unionize, you won't care about these real tangible things that happen. You'll be too worried, freaking out about this meaningless cultural stuff that nobody asked for. And if you can always just shift the focal point of society, as this elite is so annoying, but like of this owner class of people, like these people benefit from things the way they are. And usually people getting more rights actively deters from the one thing that they care about, which is profit. So if you can pay your news stations and pay your political pundits to actively agitate for stuff that's meaningless, all of these people will not organize and fight for something that is meaningful, which actively deters from your bottom line. And that's what I'm most worried about cancel culture discourse, is because it just takes the focal point away from a lot of stuff that has just been bubbling. We all feel this anxiety. Housing prices are going up. You can't, it's hard to live. People aren't having kids anymore because it's too expensive. But if the only way that that gets solved is if these people are, it's kind of dethroned, they lose power. And these people have money and they don't want to be depowered. So they're going to do whatever they physically can to keep everyone focused on stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a carrot on a stick issue of sorts. It's this very enticing, like, hey, this is important, keep chasing it, and there's always something new that's important to keep chasing, to keep talking about. And then there's whole people who are, they'll spend 20 years of their life in the end, like just focusing on these very activist issues. Like you're almost being given a story because the algorithms perfectly know how to get it in front of you and put it in front of the right people based off of your interest and where you live and what you've clicked on and your internet habits. They have a good profile of you, so they're able to directly market to you. Here's what you should be talking about. Oh, hey, by next year you're going to be someone who's at Trump rallies wearing Trump shirts because we put the right things right in front of you at the right time. And it's just fucked up. People could be self-actualizing, like you said. People could be pursuing what they really love, not fighting what they oppose.
Yeah, and I think the point that I'm getting at is under the current system, because of the oppression of how hard it is to make money and live, it is almost impossible to become self-actualized without like real effort, like real hard. You spend the 2 hours a day you get not laboring working on this. And that leads to a very unintrospective society. And that is what these people thrive on. Because if we can get anyone to introspect, actually, they come to the conclusion that these people are really actively harmful and not worthy of praise, and they don't deserve to hold power. These big CEOs, these corporations. But what I really want everyone to be super wary of when you talk or see anything about cancel culture is just the grift that can go along with it. So, um, people trying to stifle others' opinions or because they don't align with their own values has happened forever. It's just always happened. This is just an innate human thing that goes on. And actually, the church has done it. The Catholic Church has done it for millennia. So if you go look at people in power, whenever any rights are revoked, whenever the Catholic Church or any like a governing body that is religious oversteps it, that it's just not in favor of like social change or more people getting more rights, nobody says anything. these cancellations hypothetically are non-problematic. It is only when trans people want more rights, they don't want to die at 30. Gay people want more rights. Black people want better voting laws. They want all these things. That's when a lot of problems happen.
Hmm.
So it's like, why does this happen? Why is it only when more people want more liberation that this is really problematic and causes so much friction? But this cancellation of all the rights in the first place is a non-issue. And it's
So how do we stop falling for it? How do we stop, like they're doing this, like, oh, look over here, and they're smacking us over here with this hand, you know? How do we as just a general people, like you and I, think about these sort of things? Cool. Maybe it won't get by us, but like general people who are just trying to, at this point, they don't even fucking watch news. They don't really follow, like nobody trusts the CDC anymore. Everything's crazy. We don't know
yeah.
what truth
Um,
information is. We're all left or we're all right, whatever. How
I
do we
I
live
think a
with
really
this?
good place to start is when you hear so a lot of people when they talk about stuff like this, they'll use really fluttery, ambiguous language to direct you to a point, kinda like, and they want you to graft your ideology onto it. So they'll say a lot of big fluttery words that not many people know, and they will slowly get you to think that they're intellectual, definitely that they're very smart because they're using a lot of big words and it's not really comprehensible. And if you broke down their sentence, it wouldn't mean anything because they didn't define terms, they didn't use anything properly. They're just muddying the water. And they want to slowly point you in a direction of a just like a political idea while making you feel smart. So if you, whenever you hear anyone talking about something, and they use a lot of like philosophical terms. So if you hear postmodernism, critical race theory, intersectionality, things like this, go look at it. Go Google what that really is, because all these ideas and Marxism, all these ideas are frameworks and tools in which to think or ways to analyze the world, and they're benign by nature, but they all do have a goal of giving more people more rights and just demystifying this. You can actually intake a lot of this clutter, all this cluttered language, and really figure out maybe what the end goal of this is, because it's just important to figure it out. People talk a lot.
So I mean, this comes right back full circle to just sense making. Like, so a big problem here is we think we're talking about the same things, but we're actually using different definitions, and none of it can be summarized in like just one sentence and actually be completely understood in that same way. So it is this complicated issue, but I think so that means what we need more is we need more. You're on this side, I'm on that side. Cool, let's have a long form conversation and get to the bottom of what you mean and what I mean, and then we can come to some sort of like middle ground of definitions of what this really means to both of us, and where do we go from there? How do we solve the problem?
Yeah, a big red flag when you hear anyone talk about stuff is if they don't define terms when they first start making large, lofty claims that are really fluttery and wordy. You can usually find somebody that is trying to string you along or lead you in a way that is a little malicious when they don't do that, because anyone that really cares will always do that. They'll always define terms. And in fact, whenever we end up having this conversation again in a more formal fashion, the first thing I want to do is define terms.
Hmm.
So, and this is a stretch, but epistemological skills, so understanding when like a political pundit is making an argument, how to reason with it and then find the holes in it, because it's really easy when sentences are not contested by somebody else in the middle of it. It's easy to just transmit it, hear it, decode it, and be like, yeah, makes sense. But there was no actually thought that went into analyzing the sentence. And you can really be strung along down a pathway that is just not great sometimes by just passively listening to things without critically thinking about what they're saying.
Yeah, I mean that's what we've talked about this before. Our entire generation is passively listening to things all the time. You and I both passively listen to so much shit all the time. We complain about it and wish we didn't do it. Uh, is this
It's just, yeah, what is the point this person's trying to make? Or they like, what is the end goal? How are they using these words? What are the holes in this?
so okay? But what about this? If you were to go in, like, have you ever seen The Office, the show?
I'm aware of The Office, yes.
Okay, so you're aware of it. Imagine if you go in. I think there's like nine seasons or something like that. If you go in season 8, episode 7, and that's the first episode you watch, it's a different experience for you as a newcomer versus me who has watched since the first episode. When I get there, I know the background, I know the backstory. Are we basically living in a society where, because of technology, we're able to just randomly tune in the middle of people and we don't get to understand what they actually mean? I've watched enough hours of Jordan Peterson, for example, that when he says God, when he talks about these things, I know what he means by that. I'm not using my definition of God. I'm feeling it within his because I've watched so many fucking hours of the guy. I think that that's a problem in our ability to like understand each other, and I don't really know how we would solve that. Where we're tuning in the middle of conversations basically, and just picking up right where they are, in without having the context of knowing what they mean, where they've studied, where they lived, what their past is, all these things. Like, it's very difficult to understand something just on here, I'm going to give it to you in this perfectly laid out form, like book format. This discourse isn't happening in perfectly edited book format where we're like, hey, make sure we define these terms. The discourse is happening in the middle of terms being defined over the course of the last 3 years of podcasts.
Yeah, and the problem is most of the time this discourse is happening in really bad faith because a lot of people are using words really incorrectly. That obviously, so a lot of political pundits or will use words that the other side of the spectrum uses or has, like ideologies or frameworks of thought, and they will actively misuse them on purpose, knowing that they're pretty like
Consciously? You think it's
absolutely
consciously?
100%. Yes, this is
See,
like
that's what I can't understand. Because like I don't do that.
no, because you're a very good person.
Okay. I'm fishing for compliments here. That's all.
No,
I'm
so
on
okay.
team good side.
So let's run it back. So if you are part of a political spectrum and you understand innately that the cornerstone and frameworks in which the other side thinks will actually lead a lot of people to an outcome or a conclusion that actively does not support whatever the person that's paying you money wants, you will do whatever you can to use these words maliciously, muddy the waters on purpose, and then attach these ideas that a lot of people don't know about to really bad things that happen
Hmm.
without ever actually engaging with them. That's why I really think it's important that whenever you hear anyone lament about really any big thing that you don't understand or you don't know the definition of or you haven't studied the ideas of, it's good to go look at it. Take some time, really grasp what they're trying to say. Like, go understand what postmodern theory is. And in the next pod, I will definitely 100% go over what these things are. But go look at Marxist theory. Go look at intersectionality. Like, go look at critical race theory. You'll find that these things are not bad at all, but they are in fact just tools and frameworks to understand reality. And it's what you use them for. So if we can, but all these frameworks lead a lot of people to political conclusions or ideas that actively deter from what people that hold power and have money want. So, and this is why I 100% believe this to be malicious.
So, yeah, damn, that's actually pretty good. When you said tools and frameworks to understand reality, I feel like that's a good reasoning. Like, why should modern regular people, why should like people who don't care about philosophical thought that much, or general advancement of discourse and of how we solve problems as just general human beings, um, they probably wouldn't understand why this is important. I think that's a good example. This is a tool or framework to help understand reality. I mean, okay, so if I ask, digging in on that more, it just seems very profound to me. I'm asking that back to you. What does that mean? What is a tool or framework to understand reality, and why is that important to any human individual?
Um, so usually, well, it's actually at the cornerstone of postmodern theory is that postmodern theory is a theory. It's usually relative. It proposes that there are not really black and whites in reality. It is pretty chaotic. And we're going to use a laundry list of philosophical beliefs and ideas and systems that have come before us to, in a intersectional way, study the way that power dynamics works, the way that sociology works, the way that like psychology works, to try to come to real conclusions that benefit real people. And this is important, this scaffolding is, because it gives you a critical analysis, which is why it's called critical theory,
Mm.
to maybe arrive at conclusions that will better humanity. or more profound conclusions than any one ideology would want you to. So it's actually like a fully encompassing thought process, hypothetically. And the reason we need these things is because we have really real problems and we're having really real dysfunction. And a lot of people are really suffering poorly. And if using tools like this can really just help society come to some conclusions that will lead to a more egalitarian system, that more people will have more freedom, more rights, more money, and then more time to self-actualize. And it's important to have frameworks, or at least test frameworks, because, okay, let me run it back. Ideologies are like assholes. You don't ever look at yours unless something is really wrong. So it like actually forcing yourself to go find something that makes you look at the world in a bunch of different ways. Not only does it make you a more well-rounded thinker, it also can show you perspectives that you never would have found. And sometimes when you see those perspectives, you realize that there are a lot of people that aren't like me and are suffering greatly under the current system.
Mm-hmm.
And because that is actually pretty destabilizing for the people that benefit from the system being how it is actively railed against by a lot of people with money.
Yeah. When you say destabilizing, I think that's good to niche out because it is like it's psychologically destabilizing for you to kind of like start noticing that sort of thing.
Well, not only is it personally and individually destabilizing to realize that maybe the way you look at the world is short-sighted and most certainly has to be wrong because there's no right answer, that it's also destabilizing for society, for these people to have others or have people that they deem to be under their control now think in this very multifaceted way.
Mm-hmm.
And I really firmly believe that that is why it is railed against so hard, because the people that benefit from people being unintrospective don't want that at all, because it leads people to conclusions that don't align with their interests.
This is very red pill. I mean,
This is the black
don't
pill.
wake up. What
This
do you
is the
mean
black pill, sir. The black pill is usually used in leftist circles for we need to abolish the state. Like, I realize that everything is not how it is and people don't have any rights. So you take the black pill. It's for anarchy, but
yeah. So I mean, yeah, our society, our way of doing things is making people sick. Like that's why this is worth questioning, because there's a lot of our problems. This is a lot of like the root problem is this way of thinking, why this is going on. So maybe just to overuse the phrase, maybe a lot of cancel culture sort of stuff is still worth looking at with some sort of canary in the coal mine lens of like, this is worth talking about. Yes, it's not that important. We are over proportioning our attention and how often we're talking about it, and we're blowing it out of like it shouldn't be focused on so much. But it is something. It is a something, and if we continue to allow it to just do its thing, it actually may turn into a bigger oil leak. So it is worth contemplating. But the thing itself, cancel culture itself, is like, yeah, dude, like you said, it's always been going on. It's a thing that happens.
yeah, well, and most of the time, so I will relent that there so usually it's aimed at a specific portion of people, usually left-leaning, that advocate for social change. And some of these people, because a lot of this stuff comes from intellectual circles, a lot of these tools can be misused to develop a hyper-specific subjective worldview that you then feel really strongly about. So you get a very small portion of people that say, this is my exact, really specific, hyper intellectual point of view. And if you don't conform with this, I'm going to be really mad at you and we're going to get the mob. And although this is like such a non-issue in comparison to a lot of other things, it does happen. And I do think that it is problematic. But even people in these in-groups don't like this. Like, because the vast majority of the group that studies these things actually just thinks that we want unions, we want workers' rights, we want people to have more freedom. So, and to see a lot of like public intellectuals, so like Sam Harris, Brett Weinstein, and Jordan Peterson, all supposedly align with liberal values. Because of this niche, tiny thing that happened, especially with the Evergreen thing with Brett Weinstein, where he got ran off because of people like this, throw the whole thing out. throw all of this social progress out just because some people have taken a little too authoritarian of a stance, a very small minority, I think is a massive oversight and
Mm,
definitely a baby with a bathwater problem.
right.
Because the fundamental tenets of all of this is really important for society to stumble upon. Like the rising tide raises all boats, and you want your fellow people, no matter the color, ethnicity, gender, to do better.
Hmm.
And just because some people on the spectrum have tried to get others to conform too much to some of these ideas that are a little niche and sometimes outlandish, to throw all that out, all that social progress, is bad. And I
Mm,
really think the whole cancel culture discourse, because of that, has become a massive red herring by focusing on these 3% of people. And now it just throws out all of this social progress.
yeah. So our over obsession with the radical and the extreme is overtaking the actual discourse that should be happening. Like there is something here worth talking about. This is good. Maybe the way it's presented to us is the incorrect way. So maybe we need to learn how to like, wait, okay, hold on, stop throwing a fucking tantrum. You need to use your words, but hey, listen, I'm here, I'm listening. There needs to be like a, hey, articulate yourself so we can understand because we're clearly not like you or something.
Yeah, and this is where I actually run into some issues, and I'm pretty conflicted about this because on one hand, like a lot of these people are already in a protected class, like a lot of like trans activists, people like that. They already deal with such immense issues just to like have to explain the fact that they deserve to live and exist all the time on Twitter to others that don't understand is probably really tiresome because on one hand it's like, I don't know, dude, just figure it out, you're an adult,
Hmm.
you should come to this conclusion on your own. You shouldn't have to bother me for it. But on the other hand, we're on the cutting edge of social progress, and it's whether I like it or not, sometimes it's just going to have to take some explaining. But this is where the internet comes in. So there's a lot of bad people. So Bo Burnham in his song "Welcome to the Internet," the opening line is, welcome to the internet. You can fight for civil rights or you can tweet a racial slur. So there's a lot of people that are bad actors that are purposefully just agitating and being actively harmful. So if you spend all your time on the internet just answering questions, there's a lot of people that are really malicious that are just going to run you around. So we've ran into really inauthentic um, pathways of communication that make it really hard to see if somebody really wants to learn or if somebody's just actively being harmful to me.
Mm,
And that has really muddied the waters for people having the patience to explain this.
yeah. So, but our discourse is still here nonetheless. Like it's still where it's taking place. I mean, I guess, like we already stated, the podcast and Clubhouse and that sort of thing is a step in the right direction of sorts, but the zeitgeist is being pushed on the daily by social media, tweeting. It's
Yeah.
just it's
Yeah.
still happening there. So how do we summarize and memify the profoundness of our inability to have civil and intellectual discourse, but still present that in a meme format so people understand it?
I think this is multifaceted. A problem with this is a lot of um, a lot of people that haven't been exposed to a lot of I mean, I guess it would be called radical ideology. I mean, I don't think it's radical because it's really just trying to get people like it's claimed as radical, like trans people exist, black people want more rights, better voting rights, gays want to get married, things like this. These were all denounced as radical at one point in time. I don't know where I was going with this, but I just don't think they are. I know that's not actually at all what you answered, but I've completely blanked on what I was going to say.
That's fine.
But I do want to talk about how I don't know, man. I'm running out of steam today. I haven't eaten yet.
Oh, hey, are you fasting or are you just
No, 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 no. I don't really fast.
don't, don't associate me with fasting?
No, I think it's fine. But
Yeah, I haven't been fasting nearly as much because I've been going. I try to on the weekdays, and then I end up going to have a beer, and I eat fast food because I'm a glutton.
yeah. Do you think that there's anything valuable that we could clip from that?
I think there's actually a few things. There's a few things. It's aggravating because me as like the producer as well as the podcast host, it sometimes breaks me out of flow because I'm like, oh, this is a good clip. Remember this one, or what? I'm trying to take a note real quick and then return back to the present moment of the conversation. But yeah, there's a couple things we can use, and I think it gives us actually a good. I wrote about a page of notes from our
Nice.
conversation, and so what we'll do next is I think it's be still super sick for you to do a slideshow,
I want to
like
really
a
badly. In
PowerPoint.
fact, I think this is most best presented under those circumstances because there are a lot of
Yes.
visual aids, memes. There's just like a lot of stuff that I can
So we
show.
can come back to it like, hey, so when you said this, what did you mean? And it keeps us on track of the conversation.
Yeah, because there's like some stuff I didn't want to go over, or I do want to go over in like clear, definitive terms that I haven't had the time to mull over, like
Mm.
a definition for cancel culture, how I want to really portray that, because it's really no definition the way it's used. So,
Yeah, so getting a if you can get a sentence of what cancel culture is, or two sentences even,
and
would be
I'm
solid.
actually really pleasantly surprised about how this went. I'm not gonna lie, because I actually thought that we might have some like mild grievances, but not at all.
I feel like we want this to happen. We want to disagree, but it hardly happens.
I don't. Well, like just from like a lot of the media that you've sent me, like a lot of the people that you do like for other reasons do lament against this. So I didn't
Mm,
know because you passively, I'm sure, have heard a lot of like the things that I am saying are probably not true happened. I didn't know how your like knee jerk reaction was going to be.
mm.
So
Yeah, I do. I think I think the way that I like absorb a lot of the stuff that I listen to is a lot of times when I present stuff, it's not like here's exactly what I believe. It's more of isn't this interesting? Like everything everything is just interesting to me, and I'm not sure exactly what I believe, so I'm able to kind of float along either side in a. I don't know. I'm very fluid with my beliefs, honestly. It's
pretty
incredibly fluid.
impressive. I'm hard. I have a hard problem, right? This is a personal qualm. So on one hand, it's like you want to have a baseline amount of fluidity to be flexible with ideologies and seek to understand, but I also want to have a baseline amount of principles to know when people are bullshitting me,
Right.
being bad actors. So I've really struggled with how concrete and how fluid do I need to be effective, not waver on how I feel about reality, but also intake new ideas.
Yeah. I mean, it's a really difficult balance. I mean, yeah. I'm always. I don't know. I'm just so high in openness. I think that at the time I absorb it, and then later on I'm very happy to question it, and I'm very happy to wonder what I find interesting. But like at the very initial jump off, I believe and absorb and try to understand what's being said as I'm listening to it.
Mhm.
Like I don't have a lot of instant rejection. I'm accepting right away, and then I kind of mull it over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's dude, it's insane. Cause like sometimes I hear stuff and I'm like, this is so bad. This is so wrong. I literally can't even function to get through this because I have so many like dialectical problems. It's hard. Like I fight through it sometimes so hard, but it's usually when I come to the conclusion that somebody is actively laments against the principles that I believe, or I think they're a bad actor. That's when I can't listen anymore.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you got to kind of try. That's almost like a weird gut feeling. Sometimes you could watch like 20 minutes of something, and you're like, "This guy is weird. I don't really like the way he's presenting this. I don't like the way he's talking. I don't like the way he phrased that thing. I think he's incorrect when he's defining that thing." And
Yeah.
then suddenly you're kind of questioning everything that they're saying because you don't know if they're being malicious or not.
Yeah. But yeah, so for the next one, I just really want to get across that this is a red herring. This is not a problem for regular people. In fact, it is actively covering up a lot of regular problems for people. And that not only should people be really wary when people talk about this, they should probably focus their attention other places.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I think that's important. I think that's a good summarization of what we're going to end on. That would help a lot of people feel a bit at ease. What about though? And we can talk more in depth, and we can kind of idea explore this on the other podcast. And maybe we'll save it towards the end. But where does cancel culture hold hands with like tech censorship? Because I feel like that is somewhere in the same ballpark. Like YouTube and Google saying, "Hey, this is false news," or like you can't say this, or you're going to get your YouTube account deleted from this. That is
So
fucking important. It's somewhere in the realm of cancel culture.
I want to shed a light on there's a thought called Second Channel who makes a anti-capitalist, openly communist stuff usually, like
Mm.
very very much so against the ruling class, against Google, and he had the DSHS show up at his house. And his YouTube account's been banned 4 times. So when people say that like, oh,
That's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad.
But
Like,
no, but the thing is, so people, because of the cancel culture discourse, only think that people with moderate to right leaning opinions are silenced. It's actually all like, dude, I know so many left leaning people that just talk about workers' rights that get banned instantly. Yeah. So it's like this has just been happening to all the people that talk about workers' rights, all of these real issues that are non-cultural all the time.
so this is a very important thing. I mean, like censorship is a
Yeah.
very it's not just a hot topic right now. It's actually like a very defining. These social media platforms and Google and all these companies
Mhm.
have really actually done something very strange and not great. And it has like really bad long-term implications
Yeah.
for our society.
And I want to just talk about the function of the corporation and how there's a lot of like MAGA people that think that only right leaning people will get kicked off the internet, but the number one most watched and most proliferated show on Facebook is The Daily Wire, which is Ben Shapiro's show. And
Oh shit.
yeah, well, and then like Tom McDonald is a conservative rapper, and a lot of conservative stuff does get proliferated on YouTube because it's pro business and anti workers' rights. It's pro business. It just 100% is. They want lower taxes, they want more individuality, and it just stays on there. Like Steven Crowder was like, he's openly does like a lot of really bigoted stuff that I can bring up examples of all of this and doesn't. He was a YouTube partner, but my friend was talking. This other guy was talking about like workers' rights, and the DSHS showed up at his house.
It's
So it's like,
crazy.
where's the hot button for corporations? It's when people want more money and more rights.
Dude, yeah, I mean, like we're clearly eating our tail here. Like, in which direction do we need to face what's coming next? Yeah, we're like, so do you think this is a problem with late stage capitalism? Are we at the end of late stage capitalism, and it's time
Oh,
to redefine the Constitution, and we
yes.
need to add in the fact that we have crazy technological advancements and we have fucking iPhones in our pockets now, and that had nothing to do with when the Constitution was around?
Yep, we are post scarcity. There's enough resources for everyone to live comfortably.
I like that. Where'd you get that?
No, that's just something we say.
I
I
like
don't
it.
know. I've said it for a while. We've been post scarcity for a while. We have enough food to feed everyone. We don't feed anyone. We have enough resources for everyone to have a home, everyone to live comfortably, everyone to live the American dream. And yet there are five goblins that
Yeah.
sit on all of the gold.
We need to reshuffle the deck without having a civil war first.
Yes,
How
the
do we do
problem
that?
is, yeah, okay, the problem is a lot of these pundits actively agitate one side of this to actively go against their own self interest. So there are people, they're called the Koch brothers. They're like mega corporation owners, and they have actively lobbied for about 100, like what is it, 30 years to get a large swath of America to think that unions are bad, workers' rights are bad. We want less taxes. We don't want any welfare. Like we want no safety nets because they actively harm business. Yeah, and I'm really not trying to push a leftist agenda or like agitate people, but I really just firmly believe that a lot of people really go against their interests in general.
Hmm.
Yes, because like all of these things are really important for everyone, and they have been I can scientifically show you in real world and data that these things are actively helpful for the middle class.
Do you think the average person lacks the ability to use any sort of like systems thinking or
Yes.
meta analysis of anything outside of their direct beliefs and the things that are handed to them? Do you think it's because of technology and because how often we're actually on it and we're on YouTube all day, but other people are on TikTok and shit all day?
I think because they don't, I mean, this is what you learn in college.
But now they're teaching different things in college. They're teaching like weird stuff in college now.
No, they're actually not. They're not. And that's a big fundamental part of this is for. I mean, this is like very niche scenarios in which this happens. So like all of this postmodern theory, all these things I was talking to you, you just like learn these in a apolitical benign scenario in college. Like this is just what happens. The college teaches you epistemological skills, how to critically think, and just how to have a more well-rounded worldview. And when you have that, you realize that America does a lot of really bad stuff. And there's like the world is not how it ought to be. And
How do
I,
we how do we I just feel like right here is a good spot. I'm someone who's not college educated.
No, but
I
you've come to these conclusions with just sheer force, though. So think about somebody that didn't have the will of you. How long have you spent studying this? How to think like
For
this?
real. I mean, it's genuine. Like it had to become genuinely. It's very interesting to me to even follow wanting to study all this stuff. So how to it's so hard because it turns into this instant like, oh, you think you're so smart with your college degree or whatever, and that instantly it's this dumb little thing that
Yeah.
stops discourse.
But so do you think that maybe a reason that one side of the political spectrum really laments a bit against college education and wants jobs training instead? Because you don't make a bunch of people that critically think or systems think or look at the world from a holistic perspective.
So it's just projections.
Yes. So you get a low um, information voter that is going to actively vote against their right, like their self-interest.
I
And
mean,
I'm
but then
not
you
and I'm
go ahead.
not saying that colleges campuses haven't gone a little overboard in a lot of ways, and I we can get over that because
That was a generalization I gave for
no,
sure.
no, this is real though because adjunct professors are not tenured, and if they don't align with the needs of that 3% that's being way too ridiculous, they'll get fired. So they have to align with it, and now they don't can't put their foot down. And I really want to go over that.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah,
That's another example of capitalism eating its tail, like starting to destroy. Like
yeah,
it's
and
supposed to work for us, and now it's attacking us.
that is where cancel culture is actually really bad because it's anti-worker, it's anti-professor. Like they can't actually put their foot down and be like, "Hey, this is not true," because they're worried about the mob. And I think
Mm.
that that is the one spot that is the most tangible. Definitely look at Brett. That is the most harmful. But all in all, I think academia is actually really important, like incredibly important, because it teaches you how epistemological skills. It teaches you how to critically think, deduce arguments, look at the world through a bunch of different philosophical like frameworks.
Hmm.
You're
Hmm.
more worldly. You're around people that don't look like you, don't think like you all the time. And there's a reason. Do you think there's a reason that maybe almost all college educated and philosophers over time have come to similar conclusions?
Right.
Like
There must be some truth there. Like
it's
it
not
should be something.
because it's not because colleges are liberal hellholes that teach this like idealistic way to think. It's because that maybe sometimes when you're exposed to a lot of worldly ideas, you tend to just like become way more tolerant.
Right. Yeah, when you really start, I mean, even just the instant state of making you question your beliefs, like when you start actually allowing other things other than, like, I mean, some people never do that, let alone they don't do that until they're 18, 19, they go off to college or they go live somewhere else and they're like, oh, I never even questioned, how did I learn what I learned? Who taught me what I learned? How are they different than the people who
Yeah.
are across the other states and the seas? And
So I just severely question the construction of that chicken and the egg. Like people don't leave college being liberal because colleges are liberal. They're exposed to arts and all of these frameworks and become way more tolerant, way more worldly, and understand that there are other ways to think than the American way to think.
we misunderstand that heavily. It doesn't click in our brains.
And I'm not saying there's not problems with academia because oh boy, there fucking is. But on the whole, I think that there's a reason for this.
Yeah. Jordan, I was thinking of this quote Jordan Peterson said the other day that I actually had written down. I don't remember where wrote it down. I wish I was able to still scribble on my wall because I would just do that, and that's where I know it would be. It was basically uh, he was talking about the dangers of underestimating the complexities of a problem, and he was talking about like sometimes we get this like ah let's fucking burn it down attitude, but it's like hey, yeah, there is problems. Maybe there's a point where it needs to be burnt down, but like before we go burning, let's make a plan for what's next. Let's make like an actual. Let's really follow the end product of this because yes, it's in this shitty thing. Yes, it is this thing that has been built up over a lot of years, and now it's favoring someone else over someone else or a different group identity over another group identity, but it's this very complex being that has taken a lot of time to like the Constitution. We're talking, I mentioned like maybe it's time for a new Constitution. That doesn't mean take the piece of paper and light it on fire and say let's fucking start from scratch. Like we got to work with what's there for sure and make adjustments, not burn the Declaration of Independence and then try to think of random new stuff without any knowledge of history.
Yeah. So I gotta go. I definitely agree with that. I want you to write down one thing so I don't forget it. Write down the Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I like where you're going with that. Spelling that without spell check is fun.
Man, that was awesome. I think that was way more fruitful than I anticipated. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm feeling good about the next one. When do you want to do it? And then what we'll do is we will just meet up. Like we'll take the first 10 minutes before we hit record, and you'll say, "Here's what I'm going to do. Here's what I'm going to say." We'll kind of go over notes, and we'll just, all right, let's roll. See where it
nice.
goes.
Yeah, I'm down for that. I gotta check my schedule. Hopefully, the next couple weeks. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me know. I appreciate you. And we also got to do the Wisdom of Insecurity too. That's a good one. Good book. You like it?
Nice. How
All
do
right,
I
buddy.
save
Well,
this?
what's that?
How do I save this recording?
I think once it's been recording, you could just save. Yeah, I think it automatically saves to somewhere on your computer,
Okay, nice.
and then just find a way to Dropbox it to me or whatever.
Yeah, I'll do so.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Hit me up with the text later.
Indeed. See ya.
Bye.